I've just shown you, Dutch news can be very boring, but hey, this is a Holland show and we bring you the news.
Holland, the orange line, where soft drugs are legal like shrooms before and where intellect disintegrates on youth campings. This is an episode of the Holland Land, brought to you by a Beardless Ginger.
Dear Holland, we need to have a chat quite fast, because lately you have been lacking on your ability to form a government, and we need a government very badly, because without the government, decisions can't be made. So why are you still lacking, dear Holland? Because the votes were totally rubbish. The votes were very spread out, but left and right. The two winning parties, PVDA and VVD, were only one seat apart, and the rest of the votes was totally spread out over parties that had totally not anything in common with each other. So that was absolutely rubbish. But Holland, now lately it seems that you have forgotten why it is important to have a government. A few years ago I remember laughing loudly at Belgium because they failed so hard at forming a government. But now we are going into the same road. And that really sucks for me, because now I'm probably getting laughed at by people from Belgium. And although I seriously dislike being laughed at by Belgians, I know that Holland needs a very, very stable government. One that sits small, not for just 2 years and then sorts off, like Balkenende did 4 times. That's not what we want now, is it, Holland? No, we don't. We do not want that anymore. We want a stable government, one that takes decisive decisions. That's a nice thing to say. But I'll stress some points to remind you, Holland, dear Holland, why it is important for us to have a government in the first place, and why I do not see the problems that some CDA's have with being in one government with the PVV that is not in that government. That might confuse you, so does my face, so explain that later. Holland, you need to understand that in order to make decisions and in order to make a country like Holland follow a right path, or any path at all, you need to have a government that is able to make decisions. And when we finally do have plans to form a government, many people just think that it's not important at all to have a government, and they quit believing in that government, and that is so sad. So sad, Holland! The approval rating of that government dropped 7% in 1 week. 7% in 1 week, if you don't know, is a lot. Especially if the majority of the voters voted for that combination. I believe it was 76 seats, and it's occupied right now. We formed this government. And although it is not really a government that is built on majorities, because the PVV is only supporting the government formed by CDA and VVD, which is an awkward combination even for Holland. We have had some awkward things in our government, but this is quite awkward. So the CDA and the VVD and the PVV are technically in one government, but the PVV is slightly more outside the government than the CDA and the VVD, who are forming the government. So the ministers of finance and what the people with power are being selected from the parties CDA and VVD. The PVV only supports this government and is not sending any ministers or a prime minister whatsoever. So why do members of the CDA have so much problems with forming a government with, well, falsely said, it is because the PVV isn't very optimistic about Muslims. No, it is not. The PVV is yelling, we want free speech, but is on the other hand trying to silence Muslims. The leader of the PVV, Geert Wilders, is going to go to follow a protest rally against a mosque near Ground Zero. So yeah, you might say that he isn't quite optimistic about Muslims. He also made a short movie that I am not going to cite that because I didn't like it very much. It was a bad plot, bad acting, you call it. Well, that movie was made by Geert Wilders and it was very negative about the Quran. The CDA is a party that is very optimistic about freedom of religion. Those parties are pretty much straight against each other on many points. So I hope you liked this video, and I hope you now understand why Holland desperately needs a government and why it is so important that these parties just sort out their business. And I hope you can now see why it is also so hard for the CDA and the PVV to cooperate. I'm against throwing food at people.